Hello and welcome to today's podcast. I'm your host, Susan Guthrie, and today I'm very excited to be bringing you a special guest all the way from Australia. So as I tape this on what is today, Thursday afternoon, it's actually Friday morning for him, and I very much appreciate him beaming in from halfway around the world. I did ask him earlier if he knew tomorrow's lottery numbers, but he said no, it doesn't work that way. But so today's, I wish it did. But today's guest is the founder of MODRON Spaces, MODRON. His name is Nathan Polito. And I'm excited to bring him because for those of you who listened 2 weeks ago when Simon Bomey was on and we were talking about alternatives to Zoom, we talked about MODRON. And I've gotten a lot of inquiries about it. And I know a lot of the people who've taken my training have been asking me for alternatives to Zoom for a lot of reasons. And Nathan and I are going to talk about it. But first, I just want to say thank you so much, Nathan, for giving me the time and my listeners and from beaming in halfway around the world.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me. This is great.
Yeah. And you and I were talking just before we started taping here, and we're both, in that awkward place a little bit where our businesses are doing quite well because of the or have gotten a boost, I would say, or more interest because of the COVID situation. But it's also very exciting, and really not from the success of the business, but I think for you and for me as well, it's exciting to see professionals embracing online platforms and online dispute resolution and how well it's working for many of them. So I know that you're not brand new to the online dispute resolution space. How long have you been working in this space?
Well, we founded MODRON 7 years ago now. And from the beginning, we had a vision to try and find a way to help resolve the world's disputes, which was obviously a pretty ambitious one. And we realized really early on that we would have to leverage technology to make any kind of meaningful impact. So our journey's been pretty focused the whole time. We've been trying to develop the best platform we could for online dispute resolution. Along the way, there's been so many different learnings, and we're actually early this year just released our second generation platform, which was a ground up rebuild. So we've been in this space, and it's hard to remember anything before, to be honest, but it's certainly really interesting times because, you and I were saying initially it was difficult to grapple with the concept of capitalizing or doing well, as you said, out of a difficult situation, but kind of made peace with that, just realizing there's nothing really we can do about it except we can help this part of the sector and people involved. So just focusing on that, and it's really interesting times. There's a lot of development happening, and it's definitely unprecedented.
Yeah, I feel like things, you and I spoke for the first time. I don't even know if COVID quarantining had started when we spoke last time.
No, I don't believe it had. No.
Yeah, I think it was, so we were back in the old world.
Yeah.
And we talked, and I was excited about your product, your platform then. And then we hit just the last, 5 weeks or so, 6 weeks or so. And everything has gone really into overdrive. I always say, when I've talked about online dispute resolution for the past few years, I've always said the future of online dispute resolution is online. And
Sure.
I think we're way past the future. I think the future is now. I mentioned to you, I've trained just over 10,000 people just in the last month or so since you and I last met. And and I get excited about that because that means people want to train, they want to do it well. And I get a lot of very positive feedback about this new things can be hard. And, but by and large, I'm hearing very positive things. But I will say, lately, the number one question that I am getting from all the people I've trained to people I talk to when I get interviewed is, what are the alternatives to Zoom? And they have many different reasons why Zoom isn't working for them, but they need alternatives. And I think there's something very exciting about platforms like yours that have been created I didn't even realize 7 years. That's incredible. You've been working on this for 7 years, specific to dispute resolution.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like dispute resolution for dispute resolution professionals. So there's something very exciting about that's always been your approach, as opposed to the bigger platforms that are really just meeting, centered for all
Yeah.
kinds of meetings.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So the first thing I'd say is I don't have anything bad to say about the large platforms, the video conferencing and collaboration platforms. They're all great in their own way. And it's really just the use case they were designed for. So, the one that's got the most traction is Zoom. And it's a great solution for connecting people really quickly and easily to have a video call. It wasn't designed for sharing secrets, and to some extent you can't blame them for people wanting to use it that way, So I think really the fundamental differences come down to why the platform was developed, or why the different platforms were developed, and the use case they had in mind. And in our situation, we've had a very focused use case from the beginning, as you said. And so everything we do has been designed for this target market and for dispute resolution. So hopefully that is recognized in the way the platform works and the tools and the feature sets that we offer. So I think that's the key difference. And then within that, a big part of the discussions in the space and a lot of the questions we're getting around security as well. And so probably this does go back to the use case the platform's designed for. So when you do have secure onboarding and security measures, it is a double-edged sword. It can make it not as quick and easy to connect. And so, that's where the fundamental differences start to appear. So again, we specifically designed something so that you can share secrets and have confidential discussions. So everything in the platform had that in mind from the beginning. So, again, I don't have anything bad to say about the video conferencing platforms, but I do see the market. Well, I anticipate the market will mature. It's happening so quickly. All of a sudden, there is a really defined market. And I think the first box to tick was I need to see my clients and be able to talk, box ticked. But then as the market matures, I think some deeper questions start to emerge about, well, what else in the dispute resolution process can I do? And can I do it in an integrated way? And that's really interesting because I think we've certainly identified a number of other tools and approaches to dispute resolution that are in a more end-to-end view and approach. So I anticipate the market is going to mature and be looking for a more integrated solution, perhaps.
I agree with that 100%. I do think as people, and we mentioned this actually just before we started taping, is that one of the things that I think will come out of the COVID era, as I call it, will be that even when we go back to normal, I guess we could call it, it won't be the normal of before COVID. It's going to be a new normal. And for dispute resolution, I very much think it's going to now include a much broader acceptance of online dispute resolution, as well as just dispute resolution. I think there's going to be a boost of practitioners entering the field that might not have been doing that beforehand, because I think demand will go up since the court system is going to be so overloaded. So as people are looking to establish themselves, as we always are as professionals, is what makes us special, what makes us very good at what we do. Mastery of more than one platform could certainly be included in that. There's no reason why you have to have one platform you use and that's the only thing you offer to your clients. In fact, I think mastery of more than one platform should actually be a requirement, so that your clients have choices, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think, again, that's part of the market maturing, and it's going to be really interesting to see what is considered best practice in the space in the coming months and even years ahead. And just going back, I think that you made a really interesting point about dispute resolution as a sector, as a practice, maybe having its moment to reach its full potential here. So obviously the courts around the world have were already overburdened and struggling at some level. And on the other side of this, they're going to have pretty unprecedented challenges with the backlog of cases and everything else. So I think everyone related to the ADR sector's always known how powerful it could be and the high potential it had. But to be honest, it's been pretty dramatically underperforming from where it could be. And so I think probably the biggest silver lining of all of this in this space could be that dispute resolution as a whole really takes a front seat in the scene and could remove the unnecessary burden of the courts and really improve the whole situation for communities around the world. So I think putting aside technology and platforms, I'm really excited about that perhaps really dramatic shift in how things are done, which could be really cool.
Yeah, I think that we are positioned now. It's hard to change things, I think, in any industry, but certainly law and related fields. My experience of my colleagues and myself is that we do things the way we've always done them, and we're very resistant to change. And so one thing that COVID's done is jarred us loose with no choice but to experience or try new avenues and pathways. And I think what's been exciting is most people who are trying online dispute resolution, who are mediating online, who are doing arbitrations online, who are just moving into that platform or trying something new, the only feedback I've been getting, honestly, has been overwhelmingly positive as to the experience, both from the practitioners and I think very importantly, by the clients. The clients are really enjoying the benefits that you and I both know exist, but are not what drove most practitioners right now online. It was necessity that drove them online. But things like ease of scheduling, things like that people can be almost anywhere, that they can be in a more comfortable and supportive setting. I mean, there's just a myriad of benefits that go expanding your client base. You don't have to just work with clients who, right? You and I are talking. You're in Australia. I'm in Chicago, right? Where you can work with people almost anywhere, and you can expand what you can do. So I think having the facility to be able to start working with people, and maybe you have a thought on this. I think the fact that everyone's at home working remotely right now is also going to add to the acceptance of online dispute resolution and everything online. I think the world has moved online suddenly.
Yeah, I have to agree. Everyone has had to embrace this new norm, remote working and connecting digitally. So the flow-on effects of that are definitely going to be strong and lasting, I'd imagine. So it's really a generational shift, perhaps, in the way a lot of businesses, not just this sector, are going to be conducting themselves. And we've been hearing reports at a really high level about large enterprises anticipating they're not going to be maintaining physical premises at quite a dramatic change, and so remote work across the world is going to surely have a huge increase. And then within that, probably analogous to in the earlier days of the internet, when people were really wary about internet banking and things like that, for example. And then it reached a critical mass, and these days you see less and less people in a bank, and it's
I can't remember the last time I went to one.
Exactly. So,
or a money machine. You just don't need money anymore.
Yeah. So I think humans are really good at adapting, and I imagine that huge parts of work and life are going to move into a more connected, digital way, including this space. So, I mean, it's really interesting times, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot out of this. So let's talk about the platform itself, because we were talking earlier and you mentioned security, and that is a huge issue. I know it's one of the pain points when I do trainings. That is one of the big questions for people. How can you maintain privacy and confidentiality in an online platform? So tell me about MODRON's security features.
Sure. Well, there's probably two categories around security and confidentiality, as I see them, there's the structure of a platform, the way it actually works, and then there's the technical aspect. So I speak to the structure of the platform first. So again, I've already mentioned that the platform was specifically designed to share secrets and communicate confidentially. So in the first instance, all the users are securely onboarded and with a password and specific access. Then those users are specifically attached to a case, and so that their access is limited to that case specifically. And then within cases, we have a concept of spaces, the name of the platform. So we think it's a really important concept. And you could think of spaces as rooms or places where you can create them for any reason and decide who has access to them. And then within each space, you can use all the communication and collaboration tools. So each space also has its own privacy and confidentiality controls as well. So there's three main levels of security and confidentiality controls in the platform that are kind of unique and work together. And then there's also the technical aspects to security. So these used to be quite esoteric terms, but I get the feeling that the market has quickly come to terms with them. So we basically encrypt everything. Video, for example, is 128-bit encryption end-to-end. All the file sharing and communications is 256-bit encryption in transit and at rest. We leverage AWS, Amazon Web Services for our cloud storage infrastructure. They're the largest provider in the world, and our particular setup would be considered a military-grade secure cloud storage infrastructure. We can also specify data sovereignty around the world, meaning that if you're operating out of the UK, you can specify that your data stays on UK data centers and isn't bouncing around from China to US and everywhere else, which is really important, especially in government. But I think as well, individual practitioners are realizing that that's important also. So they're the kind of headline security features, but then we're also continually having the platform tested. Independent cybersecurity firms are doing security tests and vulnerability tests, and it's a continual work in progress. So we've invested really heavily in security. We had some pretty key hires over the years from the banks and CTOs of banks and other institutions, and we'd consider our security to be at that level or better. So it's probably our number one focus, and it always has been. It's not a reaction to what we're seeing. It's from the beginning. We knew that was important for us in our market. So we take it really seriously.
Well, and I think that's an interesting point for my listeners who, may not understand in tech creation, I'm going to call it, when something has been built from the ground up with an overall view to security being a priority. That means at every level that has been taken into consideration, and the utmost, privacy and confidentiality has been built into the platform as you've gone along. Whereas, and I, just Zoom happens to be the one that's catching a lot of comment right now. They're adding security on top and adding measures, and I commend them for everything they're doing. They've been working very hard, but there is a difference between a platform that's been created from the bottom up with security in mind and one that's adding it.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think that's really accurate. So, we can mention the headline kind of components of security, but on the day-to-day, almost every decision, you have a choice about, path of least resistance or doing what's best for security and privacy and confidentially within the code, within the development. And so it's really got to be baked into the culture of the company and the development team, because again, there's these tech check boxes that you can tick off, but really it's thousands of individual choices and decision paths that you go down that will ultimately represent in your total security system. So I do think the use case a platform's designed for is key, because any serious tech company understands the basic security measures you should be undertaking. Again, encryption, tick a box, secure storage, tick a box, but it's really in the code. It's in those minute decisions every day that developers make, and that's where it really matters. So again, it has to be in the culture from the beginning.
Yeah. And I've always, just anytime I've talked to anyone who's developed an app or a developed program, to go backwards and try and change things down the chain is almost impossible.
Very difficult
to change, right? So if you're building from the bottom up tech wise, that's one thing. And depending on the level of the build out, sometimes it's easier to add things on or not. Sometimes if it's been done in a not very, adaptive type of way, it can be even hard to add layers of changes down the road. So I know
absolutely.
that this is an issue all the way around. So hearing that something has been built from the ground up for security, I think will give a lot of my listeners, a little peace of mind on that end of things.
Sure. Well, I'm not sure if it's interesting, but just quickly on our journey. So the first 5 years we were developing our first generation platform, and we're in a continual feedback and improvement cycle with partners in the industry, largely government and enterprise. And then over that period, there were so many learnings, and we reached a point where we were facing a difficult decision where we saw an opportunity to do a ground up rebuild and address everything that we'd learned and the ideas we had for something new. And that was a really difficult decision, as you could imagine, investing 5 years and everything else in
basically starting over.
Yeah. But we ended up going down that path, and that in itself, having all the learnings from that first generation, and then having the opportunity to do a ground up rebuild again, with security being number one, ease of use, flexibility being baked into what we were doing. In hindsight, it was a great thing to do because, if we'd continued with the first gen platform, we'd have a good product, but it wouldn't be what we had today.
Right. Well, and that sort of goes to what we were both just saying right there, right? When you build it from the ground up, and that's the beauty of your gen 2, is that it was built with all that feedback. And that's something Simon mentioned in the prior episode. I'd love your input. He said that one of the beautiful things about the MODRONs and you and the tech, the people who are in tech building for dispute resolution, you're very open to feedback. You want to hear from practitioners that what they need. And I know I got that from you when you and I spoke the first time. I mentioned a couple of things, and we'll talk about them. There are things you're actually working on adding into your platform, which is exciting. You're not necessarily going to pick up the phone and get someone at Cisco on the phone to talk about what changes I think they should be making to WebEx or something like that.
Yeah, sure. That's how we live. We're not subject matter experts, so you could think of us as a software development company. So hopefully what we do a decent job of is listening to the many partners and advisors that we're fortunate to have in the industry. And without their constant feedback, ideas and suggestions, we never would have got here. So that's a huge part of our existence now and into the future. So there's probably nothing we value more than feedback from the industry. And we really try to continually incorporate that. You probably imagine our roadmap is really quite extensive, and I saying a lot lately, I wish I could stop time so that we could, get through everything. But we're doing the best we can, and we're going through a significant scale up in the near future as well. So features will continue to roll out faster and faster as we go. But to your point, we're really open to the feedback, and in fact, we wouldn't exist without it. So it's vital.
And I think that should be exciting to practitioners because it gives us all that ability to have some feedback, have some input into the platform we might choose to be working with to help us make it maybe even better for all of us. And that's a really significant factor. Now I know that I've got listeners out there right now going, but what about breakout rooms? But what about breakout rooms? That is such an important factor. So tell me, I don't think you call them breakout rooms, but tell me about your equivalent of rooms for people to caucus in. Let's just call it caucus rooms.
Sure. I mean, if there's one thing that's clear, that this newly defined market, that's the number one thing that everyone cares most about. So it's really interesting. So our concept of spaces in the platform, these kind of really flexible rooms and spaces you can create for different streams of communication and managing confidentiality and privacy are a core concept in the platform. And then on top of that, you can have concurrent video calls going on in any of the spaces, and you're able to move between them, which is I guess our version of a breakout room functionality. What I'm really excited about is we have a really significant update to our whole video conferencing functionality that we're calling space calls. And I kind of like the name. And
I was going to say, it makes me think I'm calling the moon or something.
Yeah, we might have a bit of fun with the branding about that.
Yeah, we'll be looking for it.
Yeah. And I was actually testing this morning, and I'm so excited to release it. It's just so simple to use, really streamlined. We had the benefit of having thousands of cases being processed in recent times. And so, with the data and the feedback, we quickly learn what works, what can be improved, and what to work on next. So we saw a real opportunity here to streamline things. Overwhelmingly, the feedback is we need breakout room type functionality. And I may be a little biased, but I think we've nailed it with space calls. I think, it was designed specifically with mediators in mind and the types of processes that they work on, and really excited to release that. So we're just in the next couple of days, that will be live for all of our users. And, we'll also be releasing some communications about that so that you can find out more, but tremendously excited about that.
That will excite people who are listening, because I do know, I mean, that is really, except for the rare case mediator who only works in joint session, the breakout rooms are having that ability and to easily move between private spaces, I think will be something that will draw people to immediately go look at your platform. But I know you mentioned you had another couple of items in the pipeline that I also think will be of interest, that will be coming out not too much further down the road.
Yeah, and one of them I recall you specifically nudged us about, and that's the screen sharing functionality. So we will be releasing that shortly after space calls, so kind of in a week or 2 week type time period. And that will be next. And then following that, we're going to be releasing new subscription options. So we'll have 3 tiers of subscription plans. So we'll have professional spaces, business spaces, and enterprise spaces. Now, forgive listeners from around the world, but all the pricing's in Australian dollars and in my head as well at the moment. So the professional spaces will start at 49 Australian dollars per month. Business will be 149, and enterprise will be 299. Now, the way we've created the professional spaces plan is that we imagine will be the perfect solution for mediators, especially sole operators, small companies. It's really designed to be the perfect offering for them. And then, government departments, enterprise clients will probably benefit from looking at business and enterprise plans. But we'll be releasing a lot more detail about that in the coming weeks, and it will actually be available probably in about 2 weeks. All our existing users will be able to, switch between the plans at any time. It's all month to month. So that's another thing we were hearing a lot about is flexibility in price and ways to access the platform. So also really excited about that. And then beyond that, just such a long list of improvements and features we're excited to get out. I could take up a lot of time going through it all.
Well, but I think that's exciting, and it's based upon the feedback you're getting, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so it goes right back to what you and I were talking about just a minute ago. The screen share is something that I did mention to you that I think U.S. mediators, at least, will find to be very exciting because we do
Yes.
so much of it.
Yeah.
And I just want to point out, because I did the math, or my phone
Thank you.
did the math.
Thank you.
So the pro account at 49 Australian is $31.85. So it's $32 a month for your average practitioner, monthly practitioner. The business at 149 Australian is $96.84, and enterprise at 299 is $194. So your pricing is really, affordable and in there, and having some experience of some of your the other competitors in the area, you're either less or right in the space of what that is. And one thing I've always pointed out to my trainees is we are professionals. We are wanting to put on a professional experience for clients, and if that means that we have to spend a little money on programs, then that is something that we should be considering. But I still think having the best platform that works best for you and for your clients is worth paying for. These free accounts, I have mediators, it makes my head explode, who are using free accounts on some platforms, and like the time will cut off because it has a time limit on how long the meeting can go on, and I'm like, unless you can mediate in 40 minutes, you can't have a free account, people.
Sure.
Pay up.
Sure. Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's a business investment, which is always much easier to justify. It's not a luxury or a nice to have. So I think that's just part of the market maturing and coming to terms with the new norm, and the realization that smart investments are going to offer a return on investment are pretty obvious. So I think that will play out in the market.
Yeah. Now, one quick question, because I forgot to ask this when we were talking about the separate rooms, the private caucus rooms.
Yeah.
Is there a function like a door knock or a ding dong doorbell before you enter into one of the private rooms to go talk to people?
It's a really good question. So, I mean, we've considered an actual doorbell
Ding
type
dong.
function. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's two pathways we're looking at the moment. That the first already exists, which seem to work quite well. So this is always easier to demonstrate visually. But if you're on a call in a joint session in one of the spaces, for example, you can click into one of the other spaces without leaving the call and use all the tools in that space. So you could jump into the private space you've set up for party A, and you could say, hey, I think we should tone down the rhetoric. It's inflaming the situation, without leaving that call. So in the same way, you can move between different spaces and just use the messaging function. Hi, I'm free to rejoin the call if you're okay, and they'll say, yep, that's fine, and you join the call. So that's something we've seen in practice working quite well. But in space calls as well, we're initially having a kind of a 3-second countdown when someone joins, so that you'll have a notification that 1, 2, 3, that person will be joining.
Here comes Susan. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So everyone will go quiet. But I think we're going to wait and see again for the feedback and the data, and if another level of doorbell type functionality is required, then we'll implement it. But,
okay. Both those sound great, honestly. That's the right now I'm texting people before I go from one breakout room to another. So I think that will be very exciting to people. Just the idea that the chat function or the messaging function works, that you don't even have to leave one room to go have a chat or with the other room. So it's very exciting, all of the things that you're telling us about. I know that people are going to want to come and check out MODRON spaces. Where can they find you? How do they get more information? Tell us more.
Sure. So we offer a 14-day free trial on spaces. So no credit card required. I'd recommend that as a good starting point. We can be found at www.modron.com. You can sign up for the trial there and learn more about spaces. But also feel free, if you have any questions, to reach out through the website, or I'm not sure if I'll regret this, but my email is nathan@modron.com. So feel free to shoot me a question, or if you want to have a discussion or a demo, I'm sure we could schedule that as well. So they're probably the first starting points. And we'll be releasing a lot more information about the new features and the new subscription options we mentioned in the coming weeks as well.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm going to put all of that information in the show notes, so for listeners. And also, I just want to note, this show is being taped just a couple of days before it's going to go live. So all of the time frames that we are talking about, this show is going to go live on, I'm just looking at my calendar here. It's going to go live on Monday, May 4th. That's when you'll all be listening to this. So we're taping this on April 30th. So all of these dates and all these releases that Nathan is talking about are imminent and happening. So be on the lookout, checking out the website, www.modron.com.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks, Susan. Yeah, I think Space Clause will be live by the time anyone's listening to this, which is great.
I can't wait to go check it out. So thank you so much for taking the time to do this, Nathan. I very much appreciate it, and I know my listeners do as well.
Likewise, Susan. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me. It's been great.
Perfect.